You know, for how often we as a fan base try to predict what Sakurai or his team will do next, how much do we think about what actually goes on behind the scenes? Seriously, there are probably some fascinating stories, but we only have small pieces of information. And I think we could get a much better grasp on what we could see in future Smash games by looking at the early development of those that have come before. We only have so much to go off, mostly from the many articles and interviews where Sakurai has brought it up, but developing any entry in such a massive and widely played crossover series is an epic itself. And it's one whose plot is constantly changing. Content from stages to trophies to much more can end up looking very different in the final products. But while most of the content is always in flux, it seems the character choices are a different story. According to Sakurai, almost the entire roster is picked out right at the start of development. It's the kind of thing that gets more obvious once you think to look at it, since the first party, non-retro, newcomers in the last couple entries have all been relevant right around when development began. Since the fighters require a long, arduous process of modeling, animating, and balancing, they can't afford to just stick someone in out of nowhere or they risk throwing the whole schedule off. That's why the only time we've ever seen a non-clone get thrown in mid-development was with Sonic and Brawl. It's enough to make someone wonder if there was anyone the design team took an interest in that they couldn't add because it was too late. But while they don't add characters in most circumstances, there are plenty that fall short for various reasons. Had things been different, we could have seen Bowser in Smash 64, a late cut to the original entry. If Melee's development had been less rushed, according to Sakurai, Wario could have made his debut there. And then there's the story of Brawl's Forbidden 7, who all have files referencing them in the game's code, though we aren't 100% sure who the last data is for, Plusle and mine are just an educated guess. Smash 4 in particular saw the Ice Climbers miss out because having multiple nanas and their complex AI in battle at a time was straining the 3DS version, probably lagged from some RAM issues there. Beyond them, we've reason to believe someone from Rhythm Heaven was considered due to leftover files, Alf was turned down as a potential bonus clone, and Sakurai said a while back that Tekken's Heihachi, of all people, was also considered. But that raises another question. Who else was looked at that we haven't been made aware of? Who have we been overlooking who probably was considered given the timing of when development kicked off? That brings us to our challenger today. Someone who, even in their home series, hasn't really been given a fair shake. If this rumored Switchport selection process takes a different turn and goes back to reconsider characters who didn't make it into the first two versions, this challenger might finally have a bright future ahead. Delphox is one of the premier Pokemon of the Kalos region and the 6th generation, a fire and psychic type and the final evolution of the starter Fennekin. A stark contrast from the Japanese motifs of the series' previous two Fox lines, this one bears a more Western inspiration, pulling from the mages and wizards of classic European folklore. A properly trained Delphox is a master of manipulating fire in just about any form, combined with a wide array of combat-oriented psychic powers that give them impressive versatility within their natural elements. According to various pieces of lore, their abilities extend to tremendous displays of magic power, ranging from a towering cyclone of searing fire to gazing upon an open flame to enter a trance state and foresee the future. Though Gen 6's time has passed, Delphox was a pretty big deal not too long ago. Being a starter and all meant guaranteed prominence, with all the merchandise and promotional appearances that come with it. While Serena's Fennekin didn't quite end up reaching her final form, there were still multiple major Delphox characters in the anime, with one serving as a signature mon of Serena's role model and rival Aria, and another who appeared in the movie Diancie and the Cocoon of Destruction under the command of the antagonist Marilyn Flame. Between those and even a few in bit parts beyond that, one could argue that Delphox's prominence within the Kalos region was second only to Greninja's. So a lot of you have probably heard some not so pleasant opinions about this character. Well, I think there's a reason why. You see, we learn about most new Pokemon through official reveals, complete with artwork, animations, details, and lore, and enough to give a full picture of what they're like. But the Kalos starters' final forms weren't officially revealed until after the games were out, which meant we were left to discover them for ourselves through actually playing the games, or checking out the leaks that happened a few days before the release date. Which means that 90% of the fandom's first glimpse of Delphox was this lifeless, unflattering drop ball of a 3D model. I don't know how they took a freaking magic user whose middle form was exceptionally well received, mind you, and who was the first Firestarter since Gen 2 to not be part fighting and made it look ugly and boring in-game, but somehow they pulled it off. A lot of people took one look at the thing and, well, never gave the actual design a chance. It didn't help that a handful of anime still shots and manga images also dropped the ball. All that did was further cement the idea that this was an awful and unworthy character. But as time has passed, things have turned around. That initial backlash has mostly faded to more love it or hate it opinions, and I've seen a lot of people say the design has really grown on them. The influx of artwork that comes with any new Pokemon has helped, from a ton of fan art to better anime screenshots to the trading card game and beyond. Things have changed under the surface, though anyone who only gave X and Y a passing glance 4 years ago might not have noticed. But to explain why I think Delphox actually has a shot, we need to go back to before all of that. Remember, the roster for each Smash game is decided pretty early into development, but Pokemon was in a weird situation back in 2012. Generation 6 was going to be new and relevant when Smash 4 came out, but nothing about it had been officially revealed yet, and wouldn't be for several more months. Normally, all the fan talk of character slots is way off the mark, but in this case, all the dev team could do was pencil in a spot for a Gen 6 mon they'd have to choose at a later date. Then, as the story goes, the team received art assets and other details for Greninja before the character even had a name, much less was fully revealed. There was so much potential from the design that, apparently, Sakurai went home and, in a spark of inspiration, created an entire character concept in one night for the team to consider. But there's something people keep overlooking. There is no chance in hell that Greninja was the only new Pokemon they considered. From a design standpoint, you do not put all of your proverbial eggs in one basket. There had to have been others, and I'm willing to bet that as a fellow starter, Delphox was among them. Given the circumstances, it's entirely possible that the team was interested in 2 or more Gen 6 mons but was forced to choose only one because their development cycle was too far along to add another. And Delphox does have the trait Sakurai has said he looks for in a newcomer: prominence within their series, relevance at the right time, high moveset potential, and the unique angle of being a magic user on a roster with very few of them and wielding fire in a way that contrasts every fire specialist we so far have, who all focus on physical attacks. So if this rumored Smash 4 Deluxe decides to eschew new characters in favor of those who were considered originally but fell short of the cut, who knows, maybe it'd be less of a workload. We may just be looking at a potential newcomer that everyone has overlooked. So I bet some of you are wondering, what about Braixen, the more popular member of the Fennekin line, and arguably the most popular middle stage starter ever? Well, thing is, even though a lot of fans like to tout it as a measuring stick of how deserving a character is, Sakurai's never really been one to obsess over popularity. Sure, a character needs to be important to their home series and all, but it hardly matters how much the fans think a character deserves to get in, and that's something we've seen over and over throughout Smash's history. Sakurai's always been more interested in potential, and as the Fennekin line's fully evolved form, the pinnacle of their abilities, and the point where their psychic abilities and sway over the future are truly realized, I think Delphox would be the one more appealing to Sakurai and his team. Sure, I wouldn't rule out Braixen getting the nod, but much like Braixen was a better fit in Pokken due to matching its design sensibilities more and standing out better next to Gardevoir, I think Delphox would be the better fit for Smash should the stars align. We're going to approach things a little differently this time. I have a lot to say because this is a character I personally pulled for during DLC talk, and I want to show what I saw then. To best exemplify an entire species, we'll need to emphasize their most important traits: the intelligence and steady hand of a classic magician combined with a fox's agility and graceful movement, channeling an inner passion carefully honed and restrained through countless hours of training. So now we answer this. What if Delphox got a second chance for Smash? A balance between the human-like and animalistic is of utmost importance. Just like Greninja took on many traits classically associated with Ninja, we want Delphox to embody the magic users that inspired her design, especially since it'd be an easy way to stand out on a roster with so few mages so far. The good news for Delphox's appearance is we're not restricted to the aforementioned 3D model here. Sakurai and his team are known to make small tweaks and alterations to characters' anatomies and other such things to help them better fit in Smash's environment. Notable examples include the Corns being based on a combination of their younger and older designs, and Bayonetta's disproportionately long limbs and small head in her games being toned down to make her look more conventionally tall. While the Pokemon Company is known for being highly protective of its characters, they have loosened up a bit in recent years and may be more willing to give the Smash team some elbow room. A playable Delphox in Smash could see minor changes like broader shoulders, a more form-fitting robe, shorter ears and ear fur, which, by the way, not even the official artist can keep the size of those things straight, and a longer tree branch staff better suited for direct combat, just like Braixen's staff in Pokken. What we could end up with is something less like this and more like this. Again, who knows if it'd actually work out that way, but it's something worth addressing since it's happened with previous newcomers. Delphox's alternate colors would span a range as vibrant as the region her kind calls home. For example, you could have the classic wizard blue, a more naturalistic green, or the silvery violet of the shiny form that admittedly might not make it since most shiny palettes don't appear in Smash for whatever reason. Then there are potential nods to Zoroark and Vulpix and Ninetales, a more outlandish color scheme inspired by Chandelure, and even one that takes after the traditional garb of Japanese shrine maidens. These are just some of many possible options. But what if we could take this vibrant color and beauty that exemplifies the Kalos region and work it in even further? That's where a potential visual gimmick comes in that I call chromatic fire. So, fun fact, did you know that fire can burn in a wide range of colors depending on the strength and heat of the flame and the chemicals therein? Have you ever noticed how the in-game animation in Mystical Fire, Delphox's signature move, has a slight rainbow tint? Or how Braixen's enhanced specials in Pokken have traces of other colors mixed into the fire? Smash could take these ideas and run with them, creating a playable Delphox that fights with magically enhanced, multicolored flames. Sure, it wouldn't really do anything other than look cool, but this would further emphasize the character's background and give her attacks a visual identity unlike any other fire user, all based on things that already exist. It's the kind of broad creative choice I could see the Smash team going for, like how Marth's Tipper mechanic was created to convey his precise, fencer-like fighting style. As far as playstyle goes, Delphox would combine spells and staff swings to zone through two different means, adapting how she fights to focus on whichever of the two her opponent is less capable of dealing with. The flexibility of having both projectiles and the disjointed hitboxes of a weapon befits the intelligence of a seasoned spellcaster. To say no less of how unique it is, the only other clear-cut example of a mixed zoner with that much adaptability so far is Robin. Combine that with traps to place to control space and set up bigger confirms, and you have a mastermind who excels at dictating the pace of the fight. As we get into stats, remember that most Pokemon characters are sized up for Smash. According to the Pokédex, your average Delphox stands at only about 5 feet tall, no word on if that counts the ears. Our playable one would be at least a foot taller, making for a fairly big target who's also kinda light. But on the bright side, Delphox's 104 base speed isn't just for show. With ground mobility that'd be among the fastest of any zoning-based character, and with slower yet still average airspeed, this spellcaster would have an easy time moving around to create the space she wants. Crafting a moveset for any character from an RPG is usually easier than most, since they often have a long list of skills to pull from. Pokemon newcomers are no exception, and so a Delphox moveset would use a handful of moves associated with the Fennekin line, plus the motifs and themes we've already covered so far, to create something unlike any other. We're going over a full moveset this time, so strap in. First, let's establish Delphox's presence in battle with some basic grounded moves. Her jab combo would start with an open palm hit with her free hand, then a closed punch with her staff hand, then have her turn the staff upward and blow into the flame at its tip, scorching opponents with scattering embers for a rapid finisher. The combo would hit decently fast at frame 4, but would only deal middling damage, and wouldn't be disjointed until the last part. Her forward tilt would be a simple horizontal staff swing with a slight rising arc for visual flair, and her up tilt would be a staff swing overhead as a useful anti-air. Both would have lingering hitboxes, be a little larger at the tip where the flame is but without dealing more damage there, and the move's motion lines would have a multicolored, fiery texture. Her down tilt would have her reach forward a little and snap her free hand, creating a small chromatic flame in front of her. It'd be surprisingly fast and deal good damage, but with too much end lag to be a combo starter, making it more of a ranged poke than anything. Then her dash attack would have her ignite herself and lunge forward, based on the Diancie movie's depiction of the move Flame Charge. It'd be slow to start, yet also one of her stronger moves, and even be able to net kills at high percents. But for a greater display of power, we have Delphox's smash attacks. Her forward smash would have her pivot on her back foot, then swing her staff hard and unleash a fiery explosion reminiscent of the move Flame Burst. With significant startup but a quick release if charged, it'd have similar use to Meta Knight's forward smash. Then her up smash would have her crouch a little and corkscrew upward while surrounding herself with spiraling flames that look like a more colorful version of Fire Spin. Her fastest smash attack can deal multiple hits and reach as high as Marth's up smash, but without much horizontal range. And for her down smash, she'd hop slightly, swing her arms down into her sides, and send a wave of flames across the ground following their motions. With great range, it'd excel at covering rolls, but it'd also be the weakest of her smashes. Notice how all three involve some kind of movement to tie into how the Fennekin line is quick on their feet? And said swiftness carries right into Delphox's aerials. Her neutral air would have her spin in place and surround herself with whirling fire spin flames just like her up smash. Hitting on frame 6, it'd be surprisingly fast and even deal multiple hits like Lucas's Nair, but it'd be just as high commitment and wouldn't have much range. Her forward air would be a rising staff swing reminiscent of this movie clip, one of her staple moves for disjoint zoning with solid range and around 10% damage. And since it comes up from below, it'd be able to stuff grounded approaches just like Robin's Fair does. Delphox's back air would be one of her scarier moves, reaching her staff arm behind her and unleashing a powerful, multicolored star-shaped fire blast from the staff's tip. This baby would be one of her kill moves, acting like a bigger and disjointed but somewhat slower and weaker version of Captain Falcon's bear. Her up air would have her swing her staff back and forth overhead. A decently fast move that hits twice with good damage and lasting hitboxes. It'd only deal a modest 9% total, but it'd combo into itself at low to mid percents and be a strong tool for juggling opponents. I can already see Ryumane's dreading this thing. Then for her down air, a simple, swift kick straight below her. Another nod to how the line is more hands-on than your typical wizard. It'd be a quick frame 6 tool to relieve aerial pressure. But since it wouldn't deal much damage, wouldn't spike, and it'd have just enough base knockback and end lag to prevent follow-ups, it'd be purely for defense or cross-ups, or attacking on a little percent at the end of a string. Speaking of hands-on, Delphox would have a surprisingly normal grab, reaching out with her free hand and hitting on frame 7 when standing, frame 8 when running, or frame 9 with a pivot grab, all average for characters who wield weapons. She'd keep her opponent in place by pressing on them with her staff hand and holding them with the faint violet tint of psychic powers. And her pummel would have her snap her free hand and have a small flame spark to life for a brief moment and burn them, a slower pummel that deal 3% per use. Her forward throw would have her shove her victim away with a fiery explosion, capable of netting kills at the ledge with the same strength as Pitt's forward throw, giving her another kill option if she hasn't been able to land any others yet, as long as she keeps putting up an offensive front and pushing opponents to the ledge. For her back throw, she'd turn and swing her staff behind her, throwing her opponent away using weak telekinesis. Since that's not really this line's psychic forte, it wouldn't come close to threatening a kill, only being useful for getting an enemy off her. Her up throw would create a rising plume of fire to scour her victim and blow them upward. This one's her combo throw, leading into aerial follow-ups at low percents, but with enough knockback growth to prevent such things after a while. Then her down throw would have her pivot back and snap her free hand louder than normal, setting off a cluster of 5 small flames to scorch her target. It wouldn't lead into anything, but it'd deal the most damage of her throws at 10% total. Overall, Delphox's grab game would be effective at lower percents, fall off at mid percents, and then get useful again later on once her opponent is high enough for a kill throw to work. What if you want to show off a little? Delphox's up taunt would have her bow in a style reminiscent of Fire Emblem's mages to show respect, or the opposite of respect. Her forward taunt would borrow from the line's animations that involve staff spins with a spinning flourish that end with her pointing her staff forward as if to say, "On guard!" Then finally, her down taunt would have her quietly create a small flame in her free hand and stare at it intently for a moment as if divining the future, then close her hand and extinguish it as if she's learned what she was looking for. But we're not finished yet. The right special moves can elevate this concept even further and solidify this sorcerer's arsenal. And to start, what better move to put it neutral than Delphox's signature move, Mystical Fire. An awkwardly named but effective utility move, it's a stream of magically enhanced fire that deals moderate damage and debuffs the target's non-physical attack power. To bring this move into Smash, we're going to interpret it a little differently while maintaining its trait of being less powerful but having utility. Playing as Delphox and pressing B would have her begin to spin her staff in front of her, creating small, visible rings of fire. With every 2 rings, the flame on her staff would burn brighter and with more color than before. Pressing B again would have her release the stored energy in a shot of propelled magic fire. This move would have 3 levels of charge, 1 for every 2 rings created, and each level could be stored by shielding. The stronger the charge, the larger, faster, and more vibrant the actual spell, topping off with a decently quick release and 15% damage. And here's where the versatility comes in. By holding up or down as you fire it, you'd be able to send the shot at a 30-degree angle up or down, instead of just straight forward, letting you use it to pressure platforms, contest recoveries, and peg opponents with low crouches while having reflectors send it harmlessly back up. So what happens if you try to use it without a charge? Nothing happens. Mystic Fire cannot be used unless it's at least partially charged. This ties into Delphox's theme of fighting like a wise, experienced spellcaster, always planning and thinking ahead. It also ties into the concept of Vancian magic, a rule system seen in places like Dungeons & Dragons where magic spells must be prepared and charged far in advance of being able to cast them. Now let's move on to another spell via Delphox's side special, Will-O-Wisp. Another utility move in its home series, it strikes the target with ethereal flames that deal no direct damage, but inflict a lasting burn that cripples their physical strength and damages them over time. This move's Smash incarnation would have Delphox form a ghostly blue-violet flame in the palm of her free hand and then push it forward. The flame would travel moderately slowly in a straight line until it touched an enemy, object, or hard surface. Then it'd split into 3 flames that spiral outward in clockwise motion, dealing extra residual damage to anyone who touches them. If positioned right, Will-O-Wisp would intercept approaches and pin an opponent down while they take damage or are stuck in their shield. Not even most reflectors would help, as any contact would set it off and make the flame spiral outward in place, making reflecting the wisp only helpful if you catch it the instant it's cast. But there's a downside. This move would be slow to come out and only 1 wisp could be active at a time, making it a zoning tool that must be used with intelligence and in tandem with other spells. We've seen a couple variants of the move Fire Spin so far, but Delphox's recovery move brings out the real deal. In its home series, it's a trapping move learned early by the Fennekin line, a spiraling vortex of flame that prevents the target from switching out and tacks on additional damage over time for 5 turns. But for this version, this Delphox cast it on herself to protect and carry her to safety. There'd be a bit of startup where she'd fall a little as the flames formed around her, then they'd spin rapidly and pull her upward at a slight diagonal angle you'd have minor control of. It'd travel just a little shorter than the distance of Mar's Dolphin Slash, but with a more favorable angle, and deal multiple hits to anyone it catches on the way up. But remember, these specials so far traded power for versatility. If you held B at the start of Fire Spin, you'd hang in place for up to a second and charge. Release it then, and the fiery vortex would be larger, somewhat more steerable, and protect you even better. Fire Spin is all about observing the situation and using that knowledge to recover safely. Know when to let it fly immediately with only minor coverage, or when to wait and make its hitboxes bigger, and you'll always be able to reach the ledge if you're in range. Just make sure you don't get hit too far back for it to save you. So all 3 of these have been fire-based so far. This is a part psychic type, so where are the psychic powers? Enter Delphox's down special, Future Sight. In its original form, it allows the user to foretell a powerful psychic attack that strikes the enemy 2 turns later. It ties right into the power set of someone said to be capable of seeing the future, and it's even Delphox's capstone move as a Gen 7. This is a fun one. On use, she'd hold her staff hand outward with the staff itself at the side, and touch the side of her head with her free hand like, marking the spot directly in front of her with a quick flash of violet energy. Then, exactly 2.5 seconds later, a 3-hit chain of arcane blasts would strike a Bowser-sized area right at the spot it was foreseen. Future Sight is all about prediction, preparation, and control. Mark an area to discourage opponents from going there, to create a delayed wall, or to set up a trap or even something to throw someone into. And since it deals 3 hits instead of 1, it'd be capable of poking through weakened shields just like Mega Man's Crash Bomb. But what self-respecting mage is without an ultimate spell? For Delphox's final smash, Infernal Cyclone. The what, you may ask? Remember that one Dex entry? Channeling the power of a smash ball, Delphox would rise and call forth a towering tornado of chromatic flame, which, aside from the colors, is a thing that can exist in real life. The scouring wings that powered it would pull in anyone too close, incinerating them for multiple high-damage hits before flinging them out to the sides in a display as destructive as it is breathtaking. Oh, and you could direct it left and right a little too. Even such cataclysmic power is under this Archmage's direct control. This is what Delphox could bring to Smash. A master of magic fire from a fantasy world that runs parallel to our own, who fights with the wisdom and restraint of the legends that inspired her design, and the swiftness, agility, and trickery that befits her species. To fight as her would be to step into the shoes of those legends yourself, prevailing not through brute force, but with cunning and finesse, with mind over matter. Delphox's strengths would come from her ability to adapt her zoning game between projectiles and disjoints to suit the matchup and situation at hand. And her spells themselves are highly versatile and can circumvent many of the typical projectile weaknesses. In addition, she has surprisingly great mobility for a zoning character, and even has tools for landing and escaping pressure that many in such playstyles don't have. But on the dimmer side, she's pretty tall and also fairly light. Her merely okay damage output and kill power make her susceptible to rage effect abuse, and her landing tools don't work well against other zoners who easily outrange them. And her neutral game is reliant on a lot of thought and keeping a calm mind, making it liable to fall apart if her player goes on tilt. Bet you didn't expect someone like this to have so much depth. It just goes to show who can get written off by the Smash community before ever getting fairly judged. This is a character that I feel strongly about, and one that I even empathize with in that regard. We don't know if the Smash team would go back and reconsider characters who fell short of Smash 4's base roster, and even if they did, we don't know exactly who they'd be most interested in. But I do think this is someone who could be a plausible choice in such a scenario, and someone who'd exemplify the potential that speculators often overlook. But for next episode, we'll be shifting our gears a little. Our next challenger is going to be someone who's been getting a lot more attention lately. But how much does all the talk really mean? We'll see when that time comes. And so, au revoir until then.